Okay, so welcome back to my channel. This is going to be my recap of Marry My Husband, Season 1, Episode 12. So, quite a few things happened in this episode. So, it opens up with a flashback of Ji-won talking to her dad and just asking him to bring her mom home. I guess they had a fight and the mom left, and so now he's going in search of her. So, the next scene is her at the convenience store picking up a few things, and as she was leaving out, she could hear the people that worked there kind of whispering about her and her family situation and how her mother ran out on her. So as she was going home, it's pouring down raining, and she saw her father walking in the rain, and so she followed him, and that's when she found out that her mother was having an affair. And you flash to the father, and he just looks devastated. So there's really no timeline. So the next scene is her back in the convenience store, and she's, reaching for her wallet to pay for something. She can't find it. Sumi walks up and hands her wallet, and so that's when they meet for the first time and they become friends. So we flash back to the present where they're arriving home from the wedding and Yura's there. And she was telling Mr. Yu that, she would have tried calling, but she thought he would just dodge her call. So she thought she would just show up and just wait. And so at this point, Ji-won pulls away from him, and because she's confused, she don't really know what is going on. So she ends up going into her apartment, and she receives a phone call from Hyo telling her that Mrs. Yang was diagnosed with stomach cancer. So of course, at this point, she's devastated. So we flash to Yura. She went to actually see his grandfather first, and they're talking, and he was basically telling her, thanking her for taking care of that, and how he appreciated her cleaning up the mess that happened with Wang. And she was basically like, we're family, so it basically was no big deal. And so they started talking about her relationship with Mr. Yu, and she basically said that, she really never liked him as a man. She thought that he was apathetic. She really just didn't see him that way. But she was saying how recently something has changed, and, do you know why he's so different? And then she tells him that, she's thinking about sticking around Korea for a while, just to take care of some business. But you can see the look on his face, kind of, quizzed like, okay. So we flash to Min-hwan and Sumi. She doesn't really like the apartment, and she's obviously expecting Min-hwan to, broach the subject with his mother. And of course, again, he's useless, so he's telling her that she needs to do it. And so she tells him that, well, you're supposed to be the head of the household, and of course, the idea of any responsibility terrifies him to death. So he jumps back and says, wait a minute, who said I'm the head of the household? Ji-won would never expect that of me. So of course she felt away. And then he says, okay, listen, marriage works when each person basically sticks to their strengths. He was like, you keep complaining to me, which tells me that you only think of yourself. And so then he gets up because he takes a phone call, but Sumi is sitting there with the flashback of that trash comment about Ji-won thanking her for taking out her trash. So Min-hwan is on the phone. He got some scam going with his rent. His mother apparently gave him the money. He didn't sign the contract to put the money on the apartment. Instead, he had his friend transfer the money into his account, and he's going to tell his mother that the apartment was rented or something. Basically, they lost the apartment, and they basically trying to say that the lady took the money. And so, of course, his friend's like, well, what is your mother going to say about that? And, what is Sumi going to say about that? And he was like, basically, it's not her money, so why is she worried about it? So he gets off the phone, whips around. Of course, Sumi is sitting there. She basically asking, what the hell is going on? What do you mean it's not my money? What are you talking about? So the next day, Ji-won arrives at work, and Hyo is basically telling her that the chefs that they had lined up for the meal kit are basically pulling out all of a sudden. And they're reading this email from one of the chefs basically saying that the ingredients are not up to their quality. And of course, they're confused. I'm like, it's the same ingredients that we were using when you signed on. So Hyo was like, basically, she think that Mr. Kim is behind this whole thing. So she's now at her desk. Did she make it back to her desk? In any case, Mr. Yu pulls her to the side so they can have a conversation because they haven't spoken since the interaction with Yura. And she was, basically saying that she thought all she had to do was to get Sumi and Min-hwan married, and that, things were going to work out, and, basically things would fall, everything would fall in order, and that, her life would be different, that she would eventually, be happy. And then he tells her that, him and, Yura eventually get married, in the future, but the marriage ended not too long after, Ji-won's death. He basically said that he didn't know how he felt about Ji-won before she died, but after she died, he realized, and then that's when he ended the marriage with Yura. And then Ji-won, starts talking about her mom, and how her mom left her behind when she was 14, and she just feels that no matter how a relationship starts, that it should end with both parties basically being on the same page. And so as she was walking out, he handed her a card. He had been in contact with the specialist, and he had basically set things up where Mrs. Yang could get the treatment that she needed. So she arrives at her desk, and she receives a call from Yura, basically wanting to meet. So she meets with her, and they sit down to talk, and Ji-won tells her that she didn't know that he was engaged, and that she's not going to see him. And of course, apparently that wasn't good enough for her. She felt that even though she didn't know that, she was like, even though, people, can accidentally stab someone in the back, an apology, just an apology is not going to cut it. So, you're kind of looking like, what the hell do you want from Ji-won? But you slowly find out she ain't wrapped too tight. Yura's not wrapped too tight. And so, eventually, Ji-won gets up to leave, and she basically accuses Ji-won of being greedy. She ended up calling her basically insignificant, or basically, you're nothing. I hate women like you. You're nobodies who act all high and mighty, but you're really greedy and try to hide it, or something to that effect. And so Ji-won basically told her, I hate women like you who think that everybody is like everybody's like them. And she told him that I didn't need Mr. Yu for his money because I had already changed my life before I even met him. And she walks out. Okay. So we flash to Miss Yang. She's leaving her parents' restaurant. They're helping her in the car. And her father's telling her that you don't need to come back here anymore. You need to go home and you need to rest. And so we flash to Soo-jun. He's sitting outside the restaurant kind of watching, this whole interaction. And then he says to himself, like, why am I here? So it's obvious that he feels something for Mrs. Yang. And he was just watching over to make sure that she was okay. So now we flash to Sumi and Min-hwan. They're basically he's telling his mom that, trying to make it seem like he was scammed by the realtor, right? And so she's going on basically saying how she's going to confront her, and he's telling her, no, you don't need to do that. I've already done that. And then somehow it becomes Sumi's fault that her son is trifling. So Sumi basically says, well, you were the one that gave him the money and, wanted him to sign the contract. And so she basically got upset and told her that, asked her how she could be all high and mighty when she came into the relationship with nothing. And Sumi was like, well, I have money, but Min-hwan told me not to worry about it because he was going to take care of everything. So Sumi ends up saying that, I would really appreciate it if you would stop hitting on him, Min-hwan. He is, basically supposed to be the man of the house. And she was basically saying that if things don't change, I'm going to have to leave. Me and the baby is going to be up out of here. So now, Min-hwan and Sumi are back in their room. And he felt like, way to go for sticking up for your man. And she ends up telling him that there is no baby. And he's of course shocked, and he's like, what are you talking about? And so she tells him that she spins some tale about her having a miscarriage. So we flash to Mr. Yu and Yura. She's just now leaving his grandfather's house as he's arriving, and they're walking, and he basically asks her why she was there. And she tells him that no matter how things ended with us, your grandfather and I were always close. And he basically tells her, well, that's interesting because then basically the entire time we were engaged, you never came to visit him once. And he basically told her that, it seemed like when we ended things, it seemed like we were all both on the same page. And she was basically like, that was before I knew it was for another woman. And she ends up telling him, I don't like people touching things that's mine. So then there's a flashback of him confronting her with some photos of some woman that's been battered and abused, and her making that same comment. So she has a history of attacking women that she think is interested in him, or that she think he's interested in. So he goes into the house and he asks his grandfather, basically, do you think that, she's here for good intentions? And the grandfather was like, that's why I like her. Her greed makes her the perfect, woman to help you run the company. And then the grandfather says a spiteful woman, protects their family. So he's weird. He's crazy too. I think that Euro's kind of crazy is what actually caused her harm to Mr. Yu eventually. Like, that's how I feel. Like, that's how dangerous I think she is. So, we flash to Sumi and her mother-in-law, and the house is a mess. And she's basically telling Sumi that she need to get the house clean. And of course, Sumi's like, wait a minute, by myself? And she's telling her that, well, yeah, because she's the head of some committee and that they have a luncheon and she, has to go. So Sumi is going around trying to clean this house. She is getting frustrated. And somehow she ends up stumbling upon photos of Ji-won and Mr. Yu when they had their little outing on the beach and the whole thing. And then she saw this paperwork attached to the photos of the investment list for the company, and she realized that Ji-won is actually an investor. And so she got a little coin, and she of course feels a kind of way. So now she's thinking back, and she's realizing that Ji-won basically dumped Min-hwan on her, but it's like she's battling in her mind. I think intellectually she realized that she got, but her psychopathy will not allow her. She has to feel like she won. And so she's trying to tell herself that, no, I stole him. Like, she wants to feel like she got one up on Ji-won. So eventually Min-hwan comes home and she shows him the photos and the paperwork, and his reaction is like he's never seen these before. So it's like, how did these paperwork and these photos even get in the apartment? And so they talk going back and forth, and she basically went down a list of how Ji-won dumped him on her, and he's like, well, what are you going to do about it? And she was like, made the trash comment, and she called him stupid. And she basically said that we deserve compensation. And so, of course, he's like, what, do you think she's just going to give you money? And she was like, don't worry, I'll make her pay. I know everything about her. So we flash to Ji-won. She's waking up from a nap and she sees that she has a missed text. And it's text basically saying that I've been trying to reach out to you. And then she realized that it's her mom just calling her out of the blue. So she eventually meets up with her. And the mom was like, well, you grew up well. And they're talking, and she was like, it was a time where everybody got married. She was like, I was young, and basically her life was troubled, and she married her dad, but she never really liked her father. And Ji-won talked about her running out and how her absence affected her in the sense that she, attached herself to the wrong people. And so as they were leaving, Ji-won was like, well, what are you doing tomorrow? So they can, meet up and talk some more. So they meet up and, they're doing the whole photo booth and doing a shopping thing. It's, they're all smiles and grinning from ear to ear. And then eventually they sit down to have a meal. And the mom makes the comment about how she's a good daughter or something to that effect. And, since you're dating a rich man, you sure know how to shop. And of course, that obviously rubbed Ji-won the wrong way. And then she ends up saying to her, I knew it. basically telling her that she knew that she was having financial trouble. Like she knew that this was all, like there was a reason that her mother was reaching out to her all of a sudden. And so the mom was like, well, if you knew, then why the charade? And she basically said that I wanted to try it once, a date with my mom, just, I wanted to know what that felt like. And basically now that I have a safe trip home. And of course she got up and walked out, and her mother is furious. And so we flash to Min-hwan. She eventually goes to see her dad and, go to his site. And she's, trying to talk things out and the whole thing. And, she's leaving. It's dark at this point. And she stops at a light. And she sees this truck plow barreling towards her. And all of a sudden, Mr. Yu comes up out of nowhere and basically gets in between her car, his truck. He puts his truck between her car and the truck, the dump truck, whatever kind of truck that was coming towards her. And he ends up getting hit. And that is pretty much how this episode ends. So, yeah, a lot of stuff happened. But I'm going to end this here, and I will talk to you guys in the next episode.